Hi, everyone. Welcome to xAPI Cohort Week 8, implementing xAPI in your organization, tips and tricks. It says tips from for successful adoption and implementation from Megan Torrance. So we're in for a great time today. I know we're going to get some great information and high energy. So I'm going to try and match her, but I never can. But I'll try and be. So right now, don't forget, xAPI User Conference, October 24th on Tuesday. And then we have xAPI Hyperdrive, both great things to do at DevLearn, participate in. I'm going to drop some links into chat in a little bit. So we have our Learning Data and Analytics Online Conference next week. Guess what? We're going to have some people that you may have seen in xAPI cohort before, Jason and Chad. They're going to have a session at the online conference, and I'm sure it's going to be fabulous. And of course, November 2nd, xAPI party, show your work. If you're in this cohort or you were in the another cohort, or you're just doing xAPI for your organization, and you have something you have to show to us, I should say, your work, we'd love to see it. It doesn't have to be a completed project. It's just something you're working towards. And I know we've had some very new people to xAPI this cohort, and they were so excited when they got their LRS to talk and make statements. So, whatever you're working on, please give us a show to that. And then if you're not a Learning Guild member, I really highly recommend you to become a member. You have a lot of free resources. We have all kinds of publications, and we have discounts on events, and it's free. So you can have a great experience with the Guild and have a lot of professional development. We're going to have our quick check-in at the end of the session today. So please private message me if you'd like to be part of that. If there's any kind of things that you're working on. I think there's a few people who mentioned to me last time they'd be ready for this session. So if you're one of those people, please private message me. Let me know you're here in today's session so that we can indeed do that with you. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Megan, and she's going to give us her great presentation. Go ahead, Megan.
Hey, everybody. I am so excited to be back with Cohort. I've been out and about and haven't had the chance to check in every week. But I wanted to say hello. Actually, what I also want to say is, am I sharing the right screen? Karen, can you give me a heads up, or somebody? I got thumbs up in the awesome. Thank you. Because it's that terrifying moment, like, of all the screens I have in front of me, am I showing the right one? What I want to talk about today is, as we're looking at the arc, right, of the curriculum and the process with xAPI cohort, we start with, what is xAPI? What are we doing here? And how do I send data? And what do I do with data? And then there's a point at which you realize, how am I going to actually implement this? And what I wanted to do is share work that Meg Fairchild, Matt Cleaver, and I are doing with our clients, and what we've seen over the decade or so we've been working as a team with this, what we find that teams find useful, that organizations find useful after the cohort phase. For when I always say that cohort is great because you learn about a bunch of stuff. You make a project, you get to take that home to your boss and say, hey boss, look what I made. Let's do this. And then there's a moment in which boss says, yes, let's do this. And then your next job is to figure out how to do this at scale. And that's really what we're talking about today. So I'm representing work that I don't do alone. So I wanted to honor that. And I also wanted to leave you with two things. This slide is to remind me. One is, this is my email address if you want to get in touch with me and to find stuff out. I actually have been out at another conference this week, and my out of office responder is still turned on, which means when you email me, you'll actually get the link of conference links that I'm sharing with that conference that includes some of the things we're going to talk about today, and a couple slide decks and a couple of other random and useful things. So it's actually not the worst thing in the world. I'm not actually collecting leads off of this. It's literally just so you get my out of office responder. It's my low tech answer to get resources to people as soon as I possibly can. And you all also find Matt in the Slack on a regular basis, but if you needed to find him in the real world, there he is. So, and Matt is in the chat today and is going to be sharing a couple of the tools that one old, one relatively new, that we can make, we're making available to the xAPI community as folks start adopting. As we think about, right, like where we're going today, right, I want to talk about what a roadmap to adoption looks like, right? And have you think about where you are, as well as what are your strategies along the way, right? How do you move along the way from one to the next? I've got a bunch of tools and processes and skills and even a mindset around entering this work, because I've been right where you are before, right? In cohort, making a project, super excited about learning and doing, and I've got a cool, shiny thing. And then, right, scaling up from one cool, shiny thing that's built with band-aids and baling twine and free trials of stuff to actually doing it with real people, real organizations, real content, and real data, right? That scaling up is going to be important. So we've got 9 tools and processes, skills, and mindset. And then want to talk about concept viewer, as well as the profile viewer, right? Which are a couple of ways that Matt has built to look at look at data, and the xAPI profiles in a way that helps you kick off with your team and keep track of your data and all in one spot. Oh, and I'm just looking at the chat right now, and I look over, and Karen has dropped content about the hyperdrive. Actually, Karen, I'm not sure. Have you dropped the link or information about the user conference itself? I saw party, but maybe not user conference. So xAPI user conference. And by the way, you are all xAPI users now. Right? The xAPI user conference at DevLearn, it's a day before the conference, a full day just to nerd out in person about xAPI. Mary, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see your hyperdrive contest submission. I can't wait to see everybody else's. So there's 2 things, right? So one, it's a conference, and there'll be a track for newbier folks and a track for older folks. And you know who you are if you're an older folks. It's an opportunity to get together and say, hey, we did this and it didn't really work. Or, hey, I'm doing this, and if you do this and I do this, and we all talk to this same vendor the same way, we're going to get some traction. How do we get traction as an industry? So there'll be multiple conversations and lots of cross-pollination between the two. So I'm actually super, super psyched about that. In that is the xAPI hyperdrive, which enables you to bring a real project and pitch it like a contest and get judged and awarded by professionals who are doing it and know it, like professional judges. So, I mean, not like they're not professional judges, they're professionals in xAPI. They're doing it, implementing it all the time. It's fantastic. And there are projects in Hyperdrive and presented at the user conference from last year that I'm still talking about now. So I strongly recommend it, and I hope to see you there. So let's take a look at a roadmap to adoption. And when I think about doing xAPI and getting all this data and using it at scale, right? I'm really thinking about tapping into some of the learning engineering models, and the thinking enterprise-wide or organization-wide not just project-wide, but organization-wide around how am I doing all the pieces and parts of learning engineering, right? Learning sciences and computer science and data science, and pulling it all together in order to make things that make a difference. And so I just want to do that quick touch in there. What I think about and what we've seen over about a decade, and quite honestly, what my own team has participated in over a decade, right, is a progression through prototypes, which is what we're doing here in cohort. All these cohort projects, which I'm loving, right? Cohort projects are prototypes. A pilot is when we start actually doing like real content and some real people in some small basis, right? Production is I'm actually doing it. I'm rolling it out to people. And instead of hitting the SCORM button, I'm hitting the xAPI button on that, right? Multiple projects, right? The first production project works. So then we start doing multiple projects, and we have full scale operation. And here's the thing, folks, full scale operation takes years. There are precious few organizations who are fully switched over to xAPI yet, right? In a few years, I don't want to be able to say that, right? What happens before I get on the prototype bandwagon, right, is it's before I know about xAPI. I may not know anything about it. I may not like it. I may be curious. You all are here because you're in the curious spot, right? You're all here at cohort because you were curious enough to get in, maybe even then build a prototype. So what's the whole model look like? These are just, don't get too like bent around the specifics in any one box, but what we're really looking at here is a level of maturity and commitment and skill level as we move across here. And there's nobody who's all in just one spot, right? Necessarily. I mean, I'm sure there's some who are all in just like one vertical, but it's okay if you and your organization are in multiple spots. So think about it. Just kind of pause for a moment, right? In the chat, identify which column you and your organization are in. I'm thinking many of you will say prototype, maybe some pilots, but maybe some further on. So just go ahead and like stick in the chat where you are. I'm going to take a quick breath while I do that. And a sip of water. Okay, prototype, pre-prototype. Yep. Cohort is a great place to get connected pre-prototype. Yeah, love it. First production. Nice. Right? First production. Real learning, real people, real data. Right? Mary too. Fantastic. Multiple projects. Okay. So as you think about, right, we'll all be watching Mary, right, and her team in the years to come, looking at, right, when you get into that multiple project stage, you then end up having multiple it's like some of those projects will be more advanced than others. Different pieces of the organization are going to be more bought in than others. And you're going to borrow from each other as you are moving from first production into multiple. And we can pick Mary's brain about this, right? You're starting to get into those things that we're going to talk about today, right? Decisions that you're going to make around what's your data model? How are we procuring software? Right? How does that change the skill sets and the things that we expect out of our team? So super cool stuff, right? The other thing to keep in mind as we're doing this, a maturity model like this, we can start thinking about this, right? We just looked at it in terms of the organization, but I want you to also think about that in terms of your own development. Where are you personally into that, right? And so then you get folks like Martin Koob, who, right, re-engineering software applications to be CMI 5 conformant learning record pub. He's kind of on the right-hand side, right? And so, and that's that's taken time and skill building and experimenting, right? So an individual can move along this this roadmap, and then from an industry itself perspective, right? Where are the tools and products? Where's the education system that fuels and supports our new hires into this, right? And so there's all sorts of ways in which, right, we can start thinking about how an industry moves. So my little warning at the top, right, for the just discussion only. These are just loosely placed here, right? This started out as the Tin Can API project, right? Then had Experience API, and now we have something, right? CMI 5 specification defining how this works in our LMSs, right? That's kind of like the creme de la creme of xAPI, right? We used to have, ADL used to sponsor design cohorts. We then formalized it with xAPI cohorts, and now there are other folks, including TorranceLearning, building more structured learning experiences, right? Learning Ninjas has one. The learnxapi.com. There's lots of more formal learning experiences coming along, right? Along the way, right? Along the way, oh, and Jim Goodell's here, right? So I mean, we have, I'll go back here, right? We also have Experience API moving from a specification to a full-blown standard, folks. A full-blown standard. We're at 2.0. It's pretty exciting, right? At each step of that maturity model, I want you to be thinking that you are not only doing the thing, right? So you're not only building the course that sends the data and getting the reports. You're building your own skills, your confidence, credibility within the organization, relationships within the organization and with your vendors, right? That help you move to the next stage. Because each time you move along in that column, right, you are moving to something that is more complex, has greater impact, has greater risk, and costs you more money. Okay? So it's important to do this in a deliberate way, right? Along the way, right, your mindset's going to change, right? First, you're experimenting and playing and doing, right? It's a good time here. If something breaks in cohort, oh well, right? The further you get, right, into the middle, then you're proving the case, and those projects have impact, real impact. Right? At full scale operation, I like to think of, wait, so here's the thing, folks, there isn't a SCORM cohort. Maybe there is. They're way geekier than I am, right? There isn't a SCORM adopters group. There aren't conference sessions about get on board with SCORM because it is business as usual right now. It's boring. I would love to say in 5 years, maybe it'll take us 10. We won't need the xAPI cohort because it'll be kind of like everything, right? We'll all just be doing it, right? And it'll be moving beyond e-learning and LMSs and started all of the learning stack, right? Our data will get more interesting. Right now, right, when we're in prototype and pilot mode, a lot of times we're looking at data that comes from e-learning. We're looking at activity streams. We're looking at it when we're in that first production project. We care about every gosh darn button click on the screen. Right? At full scale operation, we will be looking at every gosh darn button click on the screen during design and development and early release, but then we'll also be adding in the layer of looking at actionable business data, right? I also like to think as we move across, by the time you hit the middle, you ought to be paying for stuff. Free tools are fantastic. By the time you're rolling out with real data and real people, then we're talking about paying for that. You're paying for your tools, right? Your projects that you're doing right now in cohort, right? The Wild West, disposable data, right? Anonymous data. You're just getting some data. The further to the right you get, the more you need to pay attention to that data, the more well-governed it needs to be, the more organized it needs to be. and the more data privacy and protections you need to place on those. And yeah, as you move across, it does get more expensive, right? And thanks, Matt, for I just noticed in the chat. Yeah, thanks for noting that there are some other courses. There's actually a lot of opportunities for learning. You know, I think, I don't know if Jason's on today. I believe, or maybe anybody else in the Veracity team, I believe the Veracity team has a pretty solid list of learning experiences about xAPI. So go ahead and take a look there. I'm going to breeze real quickly through. Karen, can you do me a favor and remind me when you want me to stop talking? I want to talk about the Learn xAPI is fantastic. So thanks for sharing that. 9 tools, processes, skills, and mindset that will be helpful as you go. Feel free to take a screenshot of this, and you'll also have access to this in the recording as you want, right? Building a business case is essential. You are asking for commitment of resources, time, attention, and dollars, right? It's not an insignificant ask that you're making. It may be an obvious ask for some of you, right? So I've had conversations with some of you. You know you are, right? It seems like an obvious ask, but having a solid business case makes sense. And Watershed actually has a starter kit for that. But that really helps, and it's nice to be able to come with a strong case. I'm going to recommend that you build an ecosystem map, that you define where you are today and where you're going, and there's nothing like the power of a visualization to show, or a visual, right, to show what it is you're really talking about changing as you go about doing this. There's all sorts of different levels at which you could do this, and samples and different ways, but like map out, where are you getting your activity data? Where do you store data about your curricula? Where do you store data about your people? Where do you store data about performance? How do you send data? What data pieces are connected to others and which are not? And that starts to help you, as well as your business sponsors, take a look at what is available to me, right? And what are we really talking about? And maybe even phase that in over time, right? Looking at this calendar year, you're doing this thing. Next calendar year, doing this other thing, right? Next tip for you. The quality of your data depends on your data providers, right? I remember having a conversation with one of the folks from, oh, it's off the top of my head. Somebody remind me what Learning Ninjas just changed their name to. They have a really cool infinity logo. But I was talking to one of the Build Capable, thank you, right? I was talking to Brian from Build Capable back when they were ninjas several years ago, and he was really frustrated. I don't blame him. He was really frustrated because somebody had just complained to him that all that they were getting out of their learning record store was what they were getting out of SCORM. And they felt really cheated that we did all this hoop-de-doo about xAPI and all they were getting about was SCORM. Well, you know what? All this person's course, right? The course it's not the individual, the course was just sending SCORM, just formatted as xAPI statements, right? So it had nothing to do with xAPI. It had everything to do with his learning record provider wasn't providing great data, right? And so out of the box, yeah, you know what? Some of the tools may only send SCORM-like transactions. They are all getting better, including we spent some time with the Articulate team the other day, and really digging in on their CMI5 implementation and their xAPI implementation, right? And really looking at how is it that they're sending data, right? How is it that they allow people, right? How is it that they allow people to send their own custom data? And we're taking a look at those kinds of things. Domino's always been in there doing a good job from the start, right? But your e-learning tools aren't the only game in town. You got to talk to all of your tools, right? And so I actually, by the way, one of the things that make me happiest in life is updating this slide. The other thing that makes me happy in life, I was just at a conference this week and I put this slide up. It was an intro to xAPI, which you all are well beyond intro to xAPI by this point, right? But I put this slide up and I said, does everybody in this room have at least one of these tools, if not themselves, their teammates do? Everybody raised their hand in the room. We all have tools that are xAPI enabled. Might even say xAPI ready if we wanted to go old school there, right? We have the tools. Hey folks, can somebody give me some emojis? My AirMeet window just got all blurry and fuzzy and I just want to make sure I'm still like alive and in the space and doing my thing. Okay, awesome, thank you. It's one of my favorite things about here is that I can get like proof of life. So thank you, yes, I'm alive. All right, so we'll also start seeing in the marketplace, and I need to add to this slide too, xAction. We're going to start seeing in the marketplace tools that support your tools, right? So we have xAPI because we were frustrated that some of the tools didn't send good xAPI data, so we built something that would help them. xAction will also help you do that, right? It'll help you not send, but move your data, right? It's like if this, then that for xAPI data. So there's all sorts of things out there that you can start using to be the glue between the pieces of your ecosystem. And so you'll be shopping, right? I think this is tool number 4 or 5 that I've listed, and maybe 6, right? Get a good, solid software requirements list, right? We can share one to, if you're shopping, right? To evaluate your vendors. There's also a great article. It's linked in my out of office responder right now. That Art Workentine and I wrote a few years ago about the questions that you would ask your vendors about xAPI and how to interpret their answers, right? You want to have a shopping list. You want to know what it is that you need, because before you go to DevLearn, right, you want that list because there's lots of cool, shiny things, and you want to make sure you've got those questions on point, right? And so don't go grocery shopping hungry. Know what you want. And here's a secret. When I talk to software vendors, right, because you can better believe it, when I talk to software vendors, I ask them, hey, this thing is cool, but does it do xAPI, right? And depending on the nature of the software, does it send or does it receive xAPI data, right? That conversation goes a couple ways, right? That conversation sometimes is like, whew, lady, we do any API you want, right? That tells me they don't probably do xAPI, or maybe talking to the wrong person, right? Sometimes I get, yes, we do xAPI, right? So your follow-up question is, show me. I'd like to see exactly what you're doing and how. Sometimes the answer is, it's on the roadmap. Great. Show me. Show me. I'd like to see when, right? But when I talk to the vendors, right, we then have that deeper follow-on conversation, right? Yeah, and yes, Martin, hey lady should be a deal killer. But somebody did say it once, and it was a deal killer. But the deeper conversation that I hear from software providers is, yeah, everybody asks about xAPI, but nobody knows what they really mean by it. And nobody knows what they want. And so my mission and Cohort's mission is to educate the marketplace so that you can ask your vendors for what it is you actually need, right? We also have been working and seeing a number of folks who are using mini proof of concept projects to get their implementations off the ground. So they may be an organization that is moving from first production to multiple production. That's when they start buying tools, but they go back to prototype and pilot projects to do small proof of concept projects to test it, right? And I thought, wow, that's really smart. I got to share that with folks. Do not forget to train and onboard your team. This is something that I forgot. I remember having a conversation actually with Eric, who's now at SparkLearn. We had talked about data centers and data receivers and LMSs and LRSs, all this stuff. He's like, oh yeah, but we actually have to train the instructional designers to do it. And I'm like, oh, I was so like focused on the tools, I forgot about the people, right? I forgot about the people. So that's important. Make sure you bring your people along. There's lots of tools. We already talked about training, right? Along the way, I want to remind you, this is not a straight path. It is a new path. It's innovative. It's different. It's got a little bit of risk. It's got a lot of excitement and a ton of promise. But it's very easy to get myself on a freight train, moving 100 miles an hour, and to remember that we're going to do something, bump up into mistakes, need to go back and iterate, and take a breath, right? So do that. Data governance, right? Like I say, it doesn't sound like fun, but it's really, really important, right? You want to make sure that all your data is coming in an orderly and organized fashion so that you can run the analysis and the reports and the downstream data handling that you want to, and don't have to deal, right? The whole promise is that this is interoperable. If you are not making sure that your incoming data follows data profiles and follows your data profiles, as well as standard industry profiles, you're going to end up with a bunch of garbage, right? A just bunch of garbage. And with xAPI, it is very easy to make a lot of garbage data really, really fast, right? Really, really fast. So when we talk about data governance, organizing your data, right? You'll need to figure out what it is you're doing and then be able to share and communicate that across teams with your internal team and your vendor team, right? Anybody you hire to build e-learning for you, right? Or build learning experiences for you. So that's why we built a couple of tools. When I say we, I actually mean Matt Cleaver built a couple of really, really useful tools that as I look, we do have just a little bit of time. Hey, Karen, can we bring Matt in just enough for Matt to be able to screen share and share a couple of tools? And while Karen and Matt get organized around that, I'll share with you the genesis of these tools, right? So one is going to be the xAPI profile flattener. So a few years ago, I said to Matt, like, hey, like, the profiles are hard to read if you're not a software developer. Can you make it just like, make me a spreadsheet where every page is one profile? And so he actually did one better and made a website that pulls dynamically from the xAPI profiles and provides a really, really very simple to use framework for that. And then the second one was, how do we keep track of what are the pieces of data that we're using for a particular project? How do we keep track of that, even if we are pulling from multiple different data profiles? And we're trying to pull all that into one single space. So Matt's sharing these tools. These tools, as you got, they're free tools. There's 0 sign-in required. What that means is, right, You can't save that. Yeah, exactly. Free and zero sign-in, right? There's no marketing. We don't know who this is, right? But what this also means is it doesn't save your data. There are limitations because things happen in the browser. So, and it's free. Remember that when you're like, hey, why doesn't it do this? Remember, it's free. Matt, take it away with your amazing free tools.
All right, so yeah, going back to the flattener real quick, this has been around for a few years now. Initially, this was created when all the profiles were on GitHub and they were all in JSON LD format, and it was a little bit hard to read and figure out exactly what's in this profile, how does it work. And so we created this viewer so we could see the profiles. Then ADL profile server was created, which is a way to better create and manage those, but we still, I basically just pointed it to that source now so we can view those, but it does help it a little bit to be able to see everything in one place and kind of get an idea of what's in here, what are some of the rules, and what are some of the templates and parts of xAPI profiles. And because it's linked data, all these pieces will kind of link back up to each other, and you can copy direct links to them. So if you just want it for your own documentation or to send to somebody, makes it a little bit easier. You can always go to the profile server itself and see the source. So that's where these are coming from. And then the concepts viewer is a way to view all of those components. So if you're not familiar with concepts as a term as it relates to profiles, it's basically the building blocks that you see in all the statements and that go into profiles. So all the verbs, extensions, types, all of these things are the building blocks that go into these. So managing all that and seeing where all of those pieces are can be a little bit hard, even in the profile server, which you can search and browse these concepts, but it's still a little bit hard to get into detail and filter and search. So we created this tool to kind of make that a little bit easier. And you can export your list. So if you want to add a custom list and have your own, and then you can export that to CSV, and then you have all the IDs and everything listed there. You can, restrict it to certain profiles. And then the preset list, we added Storyline and Rise as presets that you can see, okay, what's coming out of these tools? Where is it? Like, this is like when a slide has been viewed. So you can kind of see what's coming out of those common tools. At some point, we might add some more in here for Captivate, Domino, and any other of those common tools. So yeah, enjoy.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I think that, as we think about the where we're going with xAPI, these developer tools, these supports are going to be so helpful as folks start getting traction, building bigger and bigger projects, and needing to keep track of the stuff. So I'm super excited to be able to offer these tools out to the community. All right, Karen, take it away.
All right, great. So cohort check-in. So we have with us today, I will not, if you would just say your name for me, I'm not going to try and pronounce it, probably butcher your name. So go right ahead.
Okay, I am Oladakbo Jikutu.
Okay, welcome. Do you want to turn your camera on or let us know what you're working on?
Okay.
There you go. Hello.
Yes. Hello. Hi. I'm the leader of the group. I suppose she's currently caught up with work. So she couldn't I think so she can't speak. So apparently we met for about a couple of times, and we spoke about we're pretty much overwhelmed, I must say, on what to present, but we opted for an assessment instrument to measure a scenario based assessment. So that was what we opted for. So
what group are you part of? What team? What is the name of the team?
That's team That's team learning products, learning pool products.
Okay, great, great.
Yes. So the first thing we did was to speak on the content validity of whatever assessment it was that we're whatever instrument it was that we're trying to do. So we did that, and the instrument was supposed to measure role playing, a scenario based assessment. So the first thing we did was to after validating that, we designed a scoring rubric. We designed the scoring rubric, and we also detailed the proposed interpretation of the test scores. Um, so, because this is a cognitive complex task, we're actually thinking of how to leverage artificial intelligence by using pre-trained data sets from existing AI toolkits. So, I've looked at the option of Hume.ai. So maybe when next we meet, we will be discussing how how possible that is going to be. So, but the toolkit has pre-trained because it's a role playing exercise. It's a role playing. It's a scenario based assessment. So we're supposed to look at how the participants, their gestures, their body language, the tone of their speech, and all of that. So we settled for Hume.ai. Those comes with pre-trained data sets for different emotions, different subtleties of emotion, from disgust, anger, um, all name it, all types of emotions. So I think the first thing we are going to do next week, in light of the presentation Megan just gave now, is to try to experiment and play with it first, to try to see if that is even possibly technology wise, to see if that AI toolkits can communicate with a learning record store. If that is possible, once that is possible, then we can see how we can that's the proposed interpretation of test scores. We can see how we can configure that on the on the learning record store, on the toolkits. So we are looking for. I'm considering the option of bringing in someone else who is more technically inclined, like a developer, to join the team. Um, so once that's clear, once we see that it's technologically possible, then I think we can now go ahead uh, to scale it up. So that's what we are currently doing now. Thank you.
I'll echo Megan's comment. That project sounds fantastic. And if there is any developers out there who want to be a part of that, please get in contact with the team with Learning Pool. Can't wait to see it. You have to sign up for our xAPI party on November 2nd. We'd love to see what you have. That would be great.
Oh yes, thank you.
All right, great. So thank you so much to Megan Torrance and to, let's get that slide up there. There we go. So thanks so much to Megan Torrance for really taking us through how to get that xAPI into your org and how the successful adoption, and oh my goodness, the free tools. Wonderful. So thanks so much, Megan. And thanks, Matt, because Matt had a big part in that tool creation and everything, I believe. So thanks so much for that. And then before I let you go, one last thing about the xAPI user conference, Hyperdrive. I know Megan gave you a great intro as to what it is. In there is that link that'll take you to both the user conference and the xAPI Hyperdrive. Make sure you make your submission. I think the submission is September 29th. So next week, next Friday. So if you're going to be a DevLearn, show off xAPI at Hyperdrive. And with that, I'm going to thank Megan and Matt of Torrance Learning for giving us this great presentation today, and all of you for watching and participating here in the cohort. And we'll see you next week. Next week is week 9. We're almost done. 4 more sessions, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.